Hello and welcome to the Treat Seat, a debate between the two candidates seeking to represent State Senate District 47 in the Oklahoma Legislature here in Northwest Oklahoma City and parts of Southwest Edmond. My name is Trace Savage. I'm the editor-in-chief of nondoc.com. We're an online independent journalism based here in the Oklahoma City Metro, and I'm here to moderate tonight's debate with Haley Wager of News 9. This debate is streaming on news9.com on the Facebook pages of NonDoc and News 9's Facebook pages, and if you want to share those right now, that would be wonderful.
And we are here at Francis Tuttle Technology Center's beautiful Rockwell campus. We have Democrat Erin Brewer and Republican Kelly Hines. Thank you both so much for being here and believing in the value of fair public discussions on these important topics.
Thank you. Give them a round of applause. Now that might be one of the, you're going to have to listen to me on when we want applause. We want to hold it till the end of each round of questions. Before we begin, I want to thank some of our partners for tonight's event. We have the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce and the OKC Young Professionals groups that are partners tonight, helping promote this, helping support the idea of fair public discussions about important policies. Plus, Haley and I will be joined on stage later by a talented journalist from this community, and we're very excited to have her here. Lastly, debates take a little bit of money to put together, and we are very grateful for the financial sponsors of NonDoc's 2024 Public Debate Series, the State Chamber of Oklahoma and AARP Oklahoma. Give everybody a round of applause for supporting public debates.
So again, if you can share that live stream and go ahead and silence your cell phones if you're here with us, we'll go ahead and get started.
Absolutely. I got to say this to the audience as well. We already talked about exiting the side of the room you're on if you need to step outside, but please hold your applause till the end of each round of questions. And I will have to ask people who disrupt or cause any, shout things from the audience. We'll have to remove you from the room. And if we had to shut this down and clear it out and continue the debate for the many people watching on the live stream, we do that. We don't have to do that, right? We can all behave here in Senate District 47. Here's tonight's format. Each candidate with us tonight will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Then we'll have those 3 rounds of questions, and we'll conclude with 2-minute opening statements. We flipped a coin earlier, and Mr. Hines, you're going to go first, followed by Ms. Brewer. So Mr. Hines, with no further ado, the stage is yours. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, so first of all, what I learned there was if I start yelling, I can get out of this debate. So if I start doing that, just throw me out, okay?
Security?
So I'm Kelly Hines. I'm a retired U.S. Army colonel. I grew up in southeast Oklahoma, smallest town of Whitesboro with about 18 people graduating, and it's still just small as it ever was. Relatively poor background. So when I was growing up, I told my parents I wanted to be a soldier when I was about 10, and a little bit before that, probably because I was watching Audie Murphy movies and John Wayne with my dad. My dad thought I should be an officer, and he wasn't even a high school graduate, but he was right. So at 17, I ended up joining Oklahoma National Guard as an infantryman, served there for 6 years while I went to college while they helped pay for that. Graduated out of Ada in 1992 as an aviation officer. I was a distinguished military grad in East Central. Small school, but I still like to say I was a DMG. Met my wife there, who is still married to me 32 years later for some crazy reason. Spent the next 28 years on active duty flying helicopters around the world and leading America's finest soldiers in and out of combat. Quite a few tours to Afghanistan and Iraq. My largest command in the Army was a battalion, or not largest, the largest in combat was a battalion task force. That's about 500 folks and 40-something aircraft. Did that for a year. Also commanded a forward operating base while I was there. And then my brigade command as a colonel was about 1,500 people, over 500 aircraft and 5 airfields. Tell you that just so you know where I came from. I retired 5 years ago out of the Army, came home. We've got 2 great kids, both grown. One's in the Army here, in the Guard here in Oklahoma. He's a police officer. And my daughter's marrying, she's engaged to be married to a second lieutenant in the Air Force, and she works at OU Press. Why am I running? Real quick. So, what I just told you was an American dream. It was my version of the American dream. That's what I got to live. And I want that to be around for generations to come, and I'm worried that it won't be if we don't get the right people in office. 2 things secure that. The Constitution of the United States, something I swore an oath to support and defend in 1985. I still live that. And the other one is electing the right people to office to represent us. And by right people, I mean people with a spine who aren't afraid to do what's right and are doing it for the right reason, and that are proven leaders. So that's me, and that's why I'm running. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hines. A big fan of the pocket constitution that I carry with me here, so thank you for that. Ms. Brewer, 2 minutes to you, opening statement.
Thank you. Well, I want you all to know how much I appreciate you for being here. Thank you for being engaged in this really important election Thank you to our media outlets for covering it and making sure people are aware of the issues that we're facing today. I'm Erin Brewer, and I'm running to be the next state senator here in Senate District 47. I'm a mom, my kids are here, a wife, my husband is here, my parents, my father-in-law are here. I'm so grateful for my family's support. And I love seeing lots of Erin Brewer t-shirts in the audience. Thank you all for joining us. I've lived in Senate District 47 a long time. I'm a fifth generation Oklahoman, and this is where my husband and I have chosen to raise our family and to base our own small business. This is where my kids go to school. It's where we've hosted high school Bible studies and where I have been advocating for our community for the last decade plus. Over the last several years, I've spent countless hours at our state capitol talking with legislators about the things that are really important: protecting public education, growing our economy, and justice reform. I've been an employer of men and women transitioning out of the justice system. I know what it takes to grow our economy, and I know what our schools need to help kids succeed, every child succeed. You're going to hear, I think, some pretty stark contrast between Kelly and I tonight. For a year now, as I've been campaigning, I've been talking with you at your doorsteps, and the things that you've told me are you want to see great jobs, strong schools, and holding Ryan Walters accountable, and I have been calling for that from the beginning of my candidacy. My opponent is on record saying that Ryan Walters is admirable, and he and I see that very differently. He's backed by some really extreme organizations that I think deter economic investment in our state. I think that we have a stark choice to make. I am so eager to have this conversation with you tonight, and I'd be honored to earn your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Brewer. Let's get to our first round of questions, which is titled, So You Want to Legislate. I just saw a couple lawmakers come into the room. Haley, you have the first question.
All right, Ms. Brewer, what most qualifies you to serve in the Oklahoma legislature, and what skills do you possess that will be helpful for your constituents?
Thank you. Well, like I told you, I'm the only candidate in this race that owns a business. My husband and I together have built not one but two businesses here in Oklahoma. We know what it takes to create jobs, to contribute to the economy, and we know what businesses need in order to succeed and grow here in Oklahoma. I'm the only candidate with kids in public school. In this district, public education tends to be a top priority for voters. I know the way Ryan Walters is failing our kids in schools right now because my children are experiencing at school. And like I said, I've been advocating at our state capitol. I have relationships with legislators on both sides of the aisle, and I think that's extremely important as we build bipartisan solutions to the challenges that we face.
All right, Mr. Hines?
Yeah, real quick. So I talked about it a little bit when I started there. You know, we've got to get the right people here that are actually selfless servants and know a little bit about what selfless service looks like. You've also got to get people that are born leaders that know how to lead folks from all different backgrounds. I've led the most diverse workforce, or in the most diverse workforce that's out there, the U.S. Army. So I know how to get people from all walks of life to come together and go toward a common goal, not just because I told them to do it, because I got their buy-in and I earned their trust. We're going to start making it about somebody who backs me, which is going to be interesting. We're going to talk about Ryan Walters a lot tonight, and I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully we're not going to turn this into something about somebody that's not even on the ballot, but we'll see how that goes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hines. I have the second question, and we're going to flip it. I'm going to start with you this time. This goes to you. This is a two-part question. First, what is the biggest issue specifically facing Senate District 47? And then, what is the biggest issue facing the state of Oklahoma as a whole? 60 seconds in this round to each candidate.
Okay, so it's education. You know, I am a big public education supporter. I'm obviously a product of it. Both my kids graduated from it. They're not in school now, but they did graduate from public education. And I think that's the cornerstone of the entire thing we want Oklahoma to be. We've got to have the great education out there where parents have a choice, but we've also got to make sure that it's not one size fits all. You know, the people that go to Deer Creek need something different than where I went in Westboro, Oklahoma. And if we don't start fixing that, we're not going to get Oklahoma out of the bottom. We didn't get to the bottom of the barrel overnight. We're not going to get out of it, and we've got to bring people from all walks of life together to do that. The finger pointing and everything else, there's enough blame to go around for where we are on education, and I think that's the main thing that's our problem.
Thank you very much, sir. Ms. Brewer, same question to you. First, biggest issue in SD 47, biggest issue statewide.
Thank you. I've knocked 33,000 doors talking to voters here in Senate District 47, and across party lines, Ryan Walters is what voters here tell me is the biggest problem in our district. It's really personal to us. He lives in Senate District 47, and he has attacked our schools that are here in this district. But that's not only the biggest problem in Senate District 47. I believe it's the biggest problem in our state. I believe he's an economic deterrent. I think he is causing businesses to struggle to find the right kinds of employees. He has not done a single thing to ensure that children are graduating and improving our educational outcomes. And he is the top priority for me as a senator to hold him accountable.
Thank you very
Ms.
much. Haley, sorry.
Sorry? We'll get a hang of it. Ms. Brewer, we're going to stick with you. Senate Pro Tem Greg Treat is departing his seat after 13 years in office. Those last 6, he was elected as leader of the Senate. What do you think he did well as a senator, and how might you want to be a little bit different?
I have been really privileged to get to have many meetings with Senator Treat over the years, and there are times we've agreed and times we've disagreed. But what I've really appreciated about him is he has always taken the meeting with me. The last time I saw him was actually in his front yard. I was knocking doors in his neighborhood, and I got to tell him to his face how much I appreciated his commitment and dedication to his role, and that I appreciated the meetings that we'd had over the years, and I'm looking forward to having coffee with him sometime soon.
All right, Mr. Hines, same thing. What did you like about how Pro Tem Treat ran things, and what might you want to do a little bit different?
I like that he actually provided leadership and he attempted to bring the entire party together. He did that over a long time, which is something that's the selfless service he had to go through, and everybody knows what happened with his son recently. So, kudos to him for keeping his head in the game and being able to do that. There's a few things I would have liked to see him do a little bit better. When the governor calls for him to look at taxes, I thought that we should have actually sat down and talked about it instead of adjourning like we did. Or the Senate did, without discussing it. But overall, I think he did an admirable job. Back to admirable for Ryan Walters, I said he was admirable because I think he's got a spine. That doesn't make me his biggest ally, doesn't make me Greg Treat's biggest ally either.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm going to stick with you, 60 seconds. Some of the biggest fights in the legislature are not based on political party. They're urban, rural fights, maybe even suburban disagreements. What most prepares you, sir, to work with rural lawmakers, and how do you view a policy topic like workforce development for teachers, for nurses, for engineers, even journalists, right? How do we address workforce development in a way that helps urban and rural communities alike?
Sure. So I think I've got the advantage on that one. Like I said, I grew up in rural Oklahoma. You couldn't have got a much smaller school than where I went. I walk in both lanes fairly well. So I was a poor kid in the woods in southeast Oklahoma. I'm now vice president of a company in Edmond, Oklahoma, and I've done everything in between. So I think I understand that part of it. We're already a long ways toward improving the schools in the rural areas and the main areas. We've got aviation in 88 schools right now. I would like to see that actually extended into some of the rural areas by distance learning. It's very hard to do. They don't have high-speed internet down in a lot of those areas, which makes learning more difficult. But I think, it goes back to it takes somebody that can talk both languages, if you will, to bring this together and actually bridge the gap between the rural and the urban senators.
Thank you very much. Ms. Brewer, same question to you. Urban-rural divide often at the Capitol, and sometimes people don't necessarily see that looking in from the outside. Let's talk workforce. How do we address that at a statewide level that helps urban communities and rural communities?
So I have a lot of relationships with rural legislators. That's been so important as we have worked on public education policy that benefits every student in the state, understanding that every school district does look a little bit different. And you're right, rural communities face some different challenges when they're looking at workforce development. I've actually been in meetings with rural bankers and other places across the state talking about some of the challenges they face, like housing. It's really hard to recruit new businesses when you can't house new employees. That is a #1 issue that they are facing, and they're trying to figure out how they finance development in their areas. We can work on that, but it takes listening to those rural leaders and meeting their needs.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. As we get to the end of round one, we have a toss-up question tonight. This is our first toss-up question. And one thing we know about 2025 is that Governor Kevin Stitt is going to continue to call for an income tax reduction. In fact, he'd like the whole income tax rate eliminated here in Oklahoma. Let's presume that revenue projections for the state remain about what they have been for the last couple of years. Toss-up, 30 seconds to each of you. Would you vote for a 1/4-point income tax rate reduction this spring in the legislature? Either of you can answer first. 30 seconds.
I'll go first.
Sure.
I would not vote for an income tax reduction in this upcoming session. I'm all for looking strategically at our revenue, but we are way too close to multiple revenue failures in our state to begin just slashing income tax with no plan for revenue. It does take funds to provide schools and infrastructure and broadband and workforce development, and we've got to take a hard look at where we're not able to meet needs in our state right now.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hines, 30 seconds to you.
I would vote yes. I am for lowering, if not eliminating, the state income tax completely. We've got to be good stewards of Oklahoma's money. And I'm also for taking it a little bit further and looking at our senior citizens and eliminating property tax on those folks that are taking or that are receiving Social Security. They never really own their home, and I think we've really got to look at that one as well.
Appreciate it very much. We've made it to the end of round one, and this is a great audience. Give them a round of applause. And we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so you know what that means, maybe more questions. Round two is titled To Live and to Learn. We're going to dive more deeply into some policy topics that I think everybody agrees are pretty important, like education, housing, things of that nature, and we're going to give you both 90 seconds to answer each of those questions this round. But first, Haley has a quick hand-raised question for you.
Yes, so we're looking for a yes or no answer here. After the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Dobbs versus Jackson, the issue of abortion has been left to the states. Here in Oklahoma, abortion is illegal except for instances where the life of the mother is in jeopardy. So, please raise your hand if you believe Oklahoma should have a statewide vote on making abortion services legal to a greater extent. Okay, so we're looking at two hand raises.
We got two yeses. Now, I think the natural follow-up question is, how would you vote, right? Where do you stand on these issues? 30 seconds to either of you. Toss it up.
Okay, I'll go first on that one. So abortion's a hard topic for everybody to get their head wrapped around. What I really encourage is we need to teach people more about preventing unwanted pregnancies is what we need to do. And I like that we support families through in vitro fertilization. But where I stand on abortion, and I get this question quite a bit, and I've seen some accusations in recent ads that I'm completely against abortion. I agree that you've got to make exceptions for the life of the mother, and I have a hard time if somebody's been brutalized telling them that they have to have a baby, and that comes from me having a daughter. I'm a father, and that's the one thing that I think is between their God, their clergy, and their family to decide that one.
Ms. Brewer, 30 seconds to you.
Kelly, I just want to remind you that you signed this pledge with the Oklahoma Values Coalition that says you 100% uphold our current anti-abortion law that makes no exceptions except for the life of the mother. I'm not sure what to believe tonight, but what I can tell you is I will stand with women. I know that abortion is health care. I have a daughter. If something terrible sexual assault were to happen to her, she deserves the right to make the best decision for her future with her doctor. So I can assure you tonight that I will stand with women and I will protect them when they've been victimized or when their health is in danger.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hines, she kind of talked about your campaign. I want to give you 30 more seconds.
Sure. Well, I won't take 30 seconds. So here's the deal. I am going to enforce any law that's on the book. So yeah, I signed a document that says, well, I support the law. Just like I support the Constitution of the United States, no matter what it says, and I'll fall on that sword as well. So there you go.
Ms. Brewer, I want to follow up with you. Mr. Hines said that he supported expanding for an exception for, in the case of sexual assault. Where are you? Should there be more abortion access than just in the instances of life of the mother and in the instance of pregnancy by rape?
I think we should also have exceptions for the health of the mother. Sometimes a fatal diagnosis in a pregnancy can cause great harm to a woman, but maybe not kill her. And I think she deserves to be able to make difficult healthcare decisions with her physician.
But not just generally?
What do you mean, not just generally? As far as other
abortion
exceptions?
access up to a number of weeks?
That's something I think we could determine with physicians and women at the table together. I'm sure we could come to a conclusion on that, and I think it deserves discussion with experts.
Mr. Hines, 15?
Yes, I just wanted to point out what she's trying to avoid is saying whether she agrees with the Democratic platform of the abortion is up to the mother all the way up to 9 months, and eloquently well, but that's where she's at.
Well, now he's talked about your campaign, so I want to offer you 15 seconds in response.
Well, I think the audience just spoke for me. That is not what I'm saying. I've been really clear on how I feel, and so have you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate talking about a tough topic, and we're going to move on to, I believe it's Haley. You have the next question.
Yes, he's been talked about already a lot tonight. State Superintendent of Public Instruction Ryan Walters has become quite the polarizing figure here in Oklahoma. Some people love him, some people Not so much. So, what do you like about how State Superintendent Walters has approached improving Oklahoma's education outcomes, and what do you dislike about how Walters has handled his job for the last 2 years? Mr. Hines, we're going to start with you, 90 seconds.
Okay, like I said earlier, I like that he's got a spine. It's admirable that a politician will actually stand up and say what he thinks. That doesn't mean I always agree with him, but I do agree with him when he says he doesn't want porn in school, pornography. Now, you got to define what that is. I also don't want DEI taught, and I also don't want boys and girls bathrooms. So I agree with him there. There's a couple of things I don't agree with him on. Most recently was the decision to I'm going to fund $1 million or $3 million for Bibles in the classrooms, and then have teachers teaching the Bible. What he originally said was that he wanted the Bible there for historical reference purposes, which I am totally for. I want my clergy, my church, and the parents to actually be teaching my kids about religion, and leave the school to reading, writing, arithmetic, and history, maybe civics and a little bit of computer science, and keep those two separated.
All right, Ms. Brewer, same thing. What did you like about Walters, dislike?
Kelly and I think things are admirable really differently. I don't think there's a single thing that's admirable about Ryan Walters, and I do not think he's getting the job done. In fact, I think he's failing us in every way. He has mismanaged millions of tax dollars. He's accruing $20,000 a month in legal fees alone for the multiple lawsuits that have been filed against him. He's spending $50,000 a month on a personal PR campaign that is purely self-serving. He hasn't done a single thing to advance students' achievement in Oklahoma in his 2 years in office, and there is not a thing about Ryan Walters that I think has been done well.
I guess you did answer what you don't like about him. Let me ask you before we move on real quick. Mr. Hines mentioned that he was not in favor of that $3 million to buy Bibles and put them in classrooms. I'm guessing you are, 15 seconds, I'm guessing you're also not in favor of that?
That is unconstitutional and illegal, Ryan Walters' attempt to spend millions of dollars to buy a Bible to put in our classrooms.
Well, you brought it up, and that was our next question, so I'm going to audible real quick. 90 seconds to you, Ms. Brewer. What is the most important thing we can do to improve reading scores in the state of Oklahoma? They weren't great before COVID, and they're even less great now. What do we need to do to improve something basic like reading, which would be difficult to do many, many jobs if you did not have a good ability to do that?
The number one challenge that will solve so many problems for our students is keeping great teachers in our classrooms. Y'all, we're losing 5,000 certified teachers a year, and we've lost that many over the last 3 years alone. We have got to do a better job of resourcing and equipping our teachers so that they are successful in their classrooms with their students. And that is the number one challenge for reading, math, history, all the subjects, is we've got to have quality educators working with our kids.
How do we do that?
There's several ways we can do it. We begin by ensuring that we're retaining our experienced educators now. So one of those is resources at their school. It's really hard to feel successful as a teacher when you're dealing with behavior challenges that are new and different than they've ever been before, when your resources are limited, and when you are in the political environment that we live in where teachers are often, frankly, under attack. The second thing is we've got to start incentivizing young people to pursue education as a career, and there's multiple ways we can do that. Some schools are already allowing students to pursue college courses while they're in high school, so that when they graduate with a 2-year associate's degree, they only have 2 years left of their education degree. That saves them quite a bit of college debt, potentially, and makes the role of a teacher much more appealing. But also we can incentivize students, if we could scholarship them to go to school here as an educator and then commit to stay in Oklahoma for 5 years following their graduation, that would be a huge difference right off the bat.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hines, same question to you. What is the most important thing we can do to improve reading scores and to improve test scores in general in the state of Oklahoma?
Right. Well, I think it begins with parental involvement. I'm not sure what has happened since when I grew up and the parents were reading to you. I think that's where it starts. But we do have to recruit and retain the best possible teachers. We've got to get past like I said earlier about finger pointing. So we didn't get bottom of the barrel overnight. And what we've got to do is get all the stakeholders together in the same room. The teachers, the parents, the administrators, actually the school union, the superintendent. I like to say I'd put them in a room and throw pizza under the door until they come out with a plan to actually improve our educational outcomes in the state, because we're not doing it. We've been attacking it 1 year at a time. Our infrastructure, the way we do it in Oklahoma, has an 8-year plan. We have got to do something like that with education, where we have a 5 to 8 year plan with goals and benchmarks to where we can actually improve the educational outcomes. If we want Oklahoma to remain a state where people want to live, grow, and build families, and that's the only way we're going to interest other companies into coming here, or people to move into Oklahoma. And what's worse is get kids to stay here. We've got a brain drain where our kids can't find decent jobs here because they just don't have the educational outcomes that they need, and they end up going somewhere else. It's a wicked problem. We've got to get after it, and we owe our kids better than that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hines. You keep teasing the next questions. Thank you, Haley, for your job in the round one and part of round two. I'm going to welcome on for the next two questions Faith Anna Olson, who is the editor-in-chief of the Talon student newspaper at Oklahoma Christian University. This summer, she completed an editorial internship with NonDoc, and she grew up just down the road, just like a block outside the district here. So you've got the next two questions, and you're going to start with Mr. Hines here.
Yeah, thanks, Trace. So, Mr. Hines, our next question is, as Oklahoma's career tech centers, colleges, and universities prepare their students to enter the workforce, what can the legislature do to help graduates find good work and retain their talents and tax dollars in the state?
Wow, that's a hard question. Thanks. What can we do to help them find jobs in the states? Well, we've got to attract the businesses here for the jobs when they graduate. That's what we can do first and foremost. We've got to make Oklahoma a place where the businesses, small and large, want to come and move their businesses here. So our workforce has a place to go and earn money and make a decent living as soon as they graduate.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Ms. Brewer, same question to you.
As I've told you, I'm the only business owner in this race, and what I can tell you is that companies are desperate for great employees. And so we've got to make sure that our career techs and our trade programs and our colleges and universities are aligned with the needs of our business community, and that they're turning out the graduates to fulfill the workforce needs that they're finding. But in addition, as a state, we've got to be making investments in the kinds of things that allow our Oklahoma-based businesses to grow, from infrastructure and broadband to great schools. These things, and access to healthcare, I would add. These are the things that create a great quality of life where people want to live here and businesses can also grow.
Thank you. And the next question is still with you. Housing has become a major issue all over the country, and central Oklahoma has seen costs climb as demand outpaces supply. In Edmond, for instance, a new apartment complex has not been constructed in more than a decade. What role should the legislature have in addressing the housing needs of SD 47 and the state?
Housing is truly a challenge. I mentioned what a problem it is in rural communities. I think the state has a role to support municipalities in the way they're overseeing development to ensure that multiple price point types of housing is being built in our areas. We need to understand as citizens that it takes apartments and rentals and homes of various sizes in order to support the kinds of communities that we love to live in.
Thank you, Ms. Brewer. Mr. Hines, on to you.
Sure. So I don't like government involvement when it doesn't need to be there. I don't like the federal government involved in state government. I don't like state government involved in local governments when it's not needed. I like the market to decide what we need. And that's how the American way is supposed to be, and how housing should be as well. So I don't advocate for the Senate trying to put in apartments where they shouldn't be, or are not going to be the best place for them, et cetera. So that's where I'm at on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faith Anna. Great job. Give her a round of applause. Support student journalists, right? If we're talking about workforce issues, we've got to have students coming up through the pipeline for whatever industry we're in. I'm welcoming Haley back to the stage, and we're still a couple minutes pretty well, so you guys are going to make dinner right away. I want to ask you another policy topic, though. You know, we talked a lot about education, but I think if you look at polling, and I know there's a pollster in the room here, if you look at polling, the other main issue that people say is a priority in Oklahoma involves public safety in one way or another. Now, that's can be vague to say on a poll, right, public safety, but I'm curious, a toss-up to you, and let's go 60 seconds here. What is the most pressing issue for public safety in the state of Oklahoma? What are you hearing on doorsteps? What would you do and prioritize on the term of public safety in the legislature? 60 seconds, either of you.
Go ahead.
So what would I prioritize? So on the doorsteps, we're probably not going to talk about it, but what the large question I got for most of the year I've been running was what are we going to do about the southern border and the increase in fentanyl come across and the criminality coming across with human traffickers and drug traffickers. That's what I got. So, and my answer was always, I think we need to enforce the laws we've got on the books. And as the only candidate up here that's been endorsed by 3 fraternal order of police and the Attorney General's office, they all agree with me that we've got to get crime under control and we've got to stop the southern border stuff and enforce the Oklahoma laws here to make sure that Oklahoma stays the safest place to live.
60 seconds, Ms. Brewer, same question to you. What's the top priority for public safety?
I also have not heard a ton about concerns on public safety as I've been knocking doors and we've talked to thousands of voters in the district. But what I can assure you is that we must continue to support law enforcement because safety does have to be a top priority. We are seeing criminals and criminality here in our district around drug trafficking and even human trafficking. And so we must ensure that law enforcement is fully equipped to meet those actions and put a stop to them, not just in the moment, but at the source. We've got to put a stop to those kinds of activities.
Yeah, and I'm curious, fentanyl in and of itself, 15 seconds more to both of you. I mean, I'm guessing that well, I don't know. Is the solution to incarcerate more people? I'm guessing maybe that's, a thought of the past. I mean, does that get us to addressing fentanyl?
No, I don't think incarcerating more people, of course, large drug runners, yes. I think we've got to educate people about the dangers of it. We do a lot of education about it, but people still do it. They don't realize they're doing it, or they're in such a bad place in their lives that they think that's a better option. So we got to do more education, maybe not as much incarceration on that one.
Ms. Brewer, 15 seconds.
The truth is, American citizens tend to be who brings fentanyl across the border, and we've got to put a stop to it. It is tragic when it is accidentally ingested by our kids, so we do have education to do to ensure that we're avoiding it. And I do think sometimes incarceration is the answer. Although I am all for justice reform, I am also all for public safety.
Thank you very much. That's the end of round 2. Give them a round of applause. Start making your dinner reservations, although keep your cell phones off. It's a hard thing to do. As we get on to round 3, it's titled SD47 and the Purple Crayon. That's a reference to a great children's book. I thought someone would know that other than me. I feel old. Up first, I have another toss-up question to start round 3. We're going to talk about political matters, and in this purportedly purple district, right? I'm curious that I suspect that each of you is knocking doors of voters from the opposite party at this point in the general election. And I'm curious how those conversations have gone. So 45 seconds, let's go a minute to each of you. How you approach conversations with people who are not members of the same political party as you, and tell us some of your experiences in those conversations in this campaign. Whoever wants to go first, 60 seconds.
Well, we have been knocking bipartisan doors from the beginning. That's one of the campaign promises that I made when we launched a year ago, was that we would gather a coalition of voters across party lines who shared values, who were willing to talk to each other as Oklahomans and as neighbors first. And what I've been hearing on doors over and over again, independents, Democrats, Republicans, is that they are so weary of extremism and political division, and they are so ready to do politics differently. And what we have found is so much common ground around the issues that we share. Ryan Walters, great schools, keeping teachers in our classrooms, growing our economy. These are bipartisan issues, and they are the things that I am so eager to work on. I will just tell you, though, since I have a couple more seconds, my Republican father-in-law is in the room tonight. You can wave, Fran. He has knocked more than 4,000 doors himself, and he's been talking to exclusively Republicans over the last several weeks. I've been talking exclusively to Republicans since about April or May. The conversations are so encouraging, and in fact, they're casting ballots, their absentee ballots with us at the door. So I'm really hopeful, and this is very much a purple district.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hines, 60 seconds to you.
It's been overall, it's been very learning experience knocking on doors, Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter, we're all Oklahomans, and it's been a joy. What I find interesting, though, when I talk to somebody at the door, I tell them who I am, I tell them what party I am. I don't try to mislead the voters by not telling them I'm a Democrat. And then having on my push card nowhere that says I'm a Democrat, or not having it on my yard signs that says I'm a Democrat, or even on my website. So, I've knocked on a few doors. There was a couple of doors that had my opponent's sign in their yard. When I proceeded to tell them I was a Republican in the race, they said, well, I always vote Republican. And I'm like, well, that's a Democrat sign. And I got the answer back, well, I didn't know that. So you're doing very well at misleading the voters on who you really are.
Well, I think that's a 15-seconder right there.
In no way have I ever misled a voter. We have conversations about issues and the things that are important to them. I don't lead with party. You know why? Because it's not the most important thing about any of us. But I am proud to be a Democrat. I'm a Democrat married to a Republican, and I know bipartisanship works.
Mr. Hines, 15 seconds back to you.
No, there's not a whole lot to say there. She's admitted she's a Democrat. She just doesn't tell people at the door that and doesn't go with it.
Well, we've got your party affiliations on the graphic for this debate. So let's go. Haley, you've got the first full question of this round. Go ahead.
We're going to start with you, Mr. Hines. So Oklahoma has 2 state questions on the November ballot. State question 833 would authorize the creation of public infrastructure districts. These districts could be formed by local subdivisions with 100% support among property owners, and the districts could levy a property tax for specific purposes. So the question here is, what do voters need to know about the potential impact of this proposal, and do you support or propose State Question 833?
Well, I don't like any new taxes, but I like when the voters get to choose. So if the voters choose to vote for it and want to pay higher taxes, then that's the way that the democratic process works. I don't like it personally, but I'm gonna be watching that to see what Oklahomans do with it.
Spur?
I've had to do some research on State Question 833. I was not familiar with public infrastructure districts, I'll be totally honest. Maybe some of you all were in the same boat. What I've learned is that the city of Oklahoma City and the city of Edmond as municipalities really like this option. So I will continue to research. I can see pros and cons around allowing a group of property owners to raise a tax in their area. I think that has some pitfalls, but I agree that we will abide by what the voters decide, and I'm always happy for voters to be able to make decisions about laws in our state.
So just to be clear, Mr. Hines, you're probably a no?
Probably a no.
And Ms. Brewer?
I'm still undecided. I have some more research to do.
Okay, great. Well, that's a good plug for Michael McNutt's excellent article on the state questions that we have on nondoc.com. Check that out after the debate. I have the next question, I believe, to Ms. Brewer. As noted, you're running in a bit of a purple district, and when looking at the presidential election between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, which candidate do you believe aligns best with the ideals of constituents in SD 47?
That's a really great question. I think the residents of SD 47 are pretty independent thinkers, and I'm seeing all kinds of political signs in the district. But I will say this, if yard signs are any indicator, there is significant support for the Harris Walls ticket in our district, even in places that are really surprising. And I see far more Kamala signs than I do any others.
Let me ask you, is there a sign in your yard? Who are you voting for?
Well, my neighborhood doesn't allow us to have yard signs, which really bothers me. Every day I want my yard sign in my yard, but I'm following the rules of the neighborhood association. I will cast my ballot for Kamala Harris. I will cast my ballot for a president who I believe will uphold the Constitution and the rule of law.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hines, same question to you, 90 seconds. Who do you believe best aligns with the priorities and ideals of the constituents here, and who are you supporting?
Well, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story here. So, we've had the failure in Afghanistan when we were through there after we've lost 20 or 25,000 casualties, over 2,500 dead, followed by Hamas coming into Israel and killing people indiscriminately, taking them back out. And now Hezbollah's launching rockets out of Lebanon. Iran's launching rockets at Israel. Our southern border is wide open. We've got fentanyl, we've got drug traffickers, we got terrorists coming across the border, giving them a card to come back 5 years later, 10 years later, hopefully they actually show back up. So I would have to go with Trump is the one we've got to vote for there, and I think the rest of the district is going to do that. I don't always agree with everything President Trump does, but we were safer and we were better off. Inflation wasn't out of control. Gas wasn't killing us on prices. So yeah, he says and does some things that I'd rather he didn't sometimes, but I think the district's going to go with Trump.
Thank you very much, Colonel. And I think I've got the next question for you as well. At least in political circles, a great deal has been made about a peculiarity in this race. The Oklahoma Department of Corrections notes a DOC number with your name and birthday when that's looked up on their site. As for records, agency officials don't really have anything available. They just say that the only records available show that there was probation and supervision statuses between December 1985 and December 1987. You've said that that time aligns with your freshman year at East Central University, but you've noted that you enlisted in the National Guard in March 1985. You've also suggested that DOC could have made a mistake 40 years ago. So We get asked about this. I'm sure you've been asked about it a fair amount. What have your conversations been with the Department of Corrections about this, and do you believe it's a complete error? If so, have you made a request for it to be corrected and removed from their system?
Sure, thanks for that question. Knew that one was coming.
I thought you might.
I never even heard about this number until about 3 months ago when it came up in the campaign. So it's from 40 years ago. Yeah, you're right, some underage drinking type thing. But I've never been a felon. I've never been incarcerated. I've never had a DUI. Whatever other rumors are out there. What I can tell you is what you already said. So I was honorably in the Guard for 6 years. No way I could have been an inmate. I got commissioned as a second lieutenant. You can't do that without a background check, so obviously not been a felon. Went on to get a secret security clearance, followed by a top secret security clearance, followed by a secret compartmentalized information security clearance, and promoted to colonel, which takes actual Senate confirmation and another security clearance. So I will gladly stand on my 34 years of honorable service in and out of combat to the United States of America as a testament to my character. I don't know what that is. They haven't been able to tell me. I've spent a couple hours on the phone. Yes, I've had to hire a lawyer. At least I have the capability of doing that. In the rest of the clerical era, I'd love to know how many other people have had something like that pop up that didn't get a job or were denied employment because of it, but didn't have the wherewithal or the money to deal with it.
And just to be clear, you said you think it's an underage drinking type thing. Does that mean you have more information now than you did a couple months ago?
No, that was the only thing I ever got in trouble for was an underage drinking at a party type thing. Somebody else told me it could possibly be because of the background checks. One of the lawyers there told me, hey, when they open an investigation, they give you a number, and then when they close it, they take it away. But DOCS has no idea.
And have they given you a way to get rid of it? It seems like the...
Yeah, hire a lawyer and go to court.
Maybe there's a bill in there for the legislature. Who knows? Ms. Brewer, 90 seconds to you. Does his explanation of this, what have you heard? What are your thoughts? Are you satisfied by that conversation?
Well, I've heard what we've all heard. You all have, the journalists locally have covered this question mark, and I think it just is one of those things that we're not sure about Kelly Hines. He signs pledges. He says Ryan Walters is admirable. He says he supports our total abortion ban, and then he flip-flops. So I'm not sure that we can totally trust the things that we hear Kelly Hines tell us.
Mr. Hines, I want to give you ample time to respond to that. Let you close out this section.
The only one I'd say is I'm the only one up here that's actually sworn an oath of the Constitution of the United States. So if you want to impinge on my honor, good luck with that. I've got counsel people who would love to talk to you about that one.
Thank you very much. Haley, you've got the next question in this round.
Yes, I do. Okay, Ms. Brewer, we're going to go back to you. So you're asking voters to make you the 9th Democrat in a 48-person legislative body. However, your opponent would join the Senate Majority Caucus with more chances to attain a leadership role. So how do you respond when voters say they want a senator with a better chance to pass bills and any chance of developing leadership-level influence?
Yeah, I think this is such a great question. Politics in Oklahoma are so out of balance right now. And what I've heard on thousands of doors from thousands of voters is they are so frustrated with the status quo and politics as usual. They are frustrated by the lack of transparency and accountability that seems rampant in state government today. The truth is, the majority caucus at our state capitol toes a party line. The caucus demands the way that they vote, and if they don't, the Republicans actually run candidates against one another. If you want a senator who's actually going to be independent and there to listen to you and work for you and make votes based on what is in the best interest of Oklahomans, I am a far better choice.
All right, Mr. Hines, we're going to give you 90 seconds to respond, but also answer this question. What advantage could Senate District 47 residents see by electing a member to the Senate Majority Caucus?
Okay, sure. So Erin likes to talk a lot about holding people accountable. So if you're going to hold somebody accountable, I think we ought to hold all of our elected officials accountable. But you're only going to do so if you're elected as a Republican senator. She would have you to believe that she's going to be able to do anything about Ryan Walters or anybody else is misleading, back to misleading voters. So, the House has already said that if they were going to do anything, it would take 51 members of the caucus. That they're not going to include Democrats in that decision, and they're not going to do it. But if they did and threw it at the Senate, it goes into the Senate and it goes into their caucus. And they're going to decide whether that's going to go forward or not. And if they decide it's going forward, it isn't going to need any of the Democrats, the 7 or 8 of them out of the 48, to vote for it. So whether you like it or not, whether it's pretty or not, if you really want to voice an SD 47 or anybody that's going to get anything done besides argue on the floor, it would be to elect me.
Yes. Yep.
We have seen how individual senators have actually made a very significant difference in holding Ryan Walters accountable when they have gone to State Board of Education meetings and spoken up for their school districts where he's been attacking. And that is not a vote on the Senate floor, but it has changed behavior of Ryan Walters and the State Board of Education.
Go ahead.
15 seconds.
I just got to be a little funny. I haven't seen any change in behavior out of Ryan Walters since he's been in office.
I think that's probably right. Ms. Brewer, 5 seconds?
He thinks Ryan Walters is admirable.
Oh, no, now we've got to go back to him.
Okay. Again, politicians actually will tell you the truth are few and far between. So he'll actually say what he thinks and try to do what he thinks is right. I don't always agree with it, but it's admirable that he'll take on that fight versus a lot of our politicians, both at the national level, state level, will just hide behind things and not come out with an actual opinion on anything that might get them in trouble.
Final 10 seconds, dare I ask? Okay, great, we're moving on. We have just a couple minutes left. I'm going to go to one of our additional questions. It's a hand-raised question. It's back to the topic of education. I'm just curious. We're here at Francis Tuttle. We're here at a campus where cell phones might be an issue, and there's been proposals. The governor has an executive order on this topic to try to get people to think about it. Would you raise your hand if you would support a statewide policy prohibiting students from having cell phones in classrooms? Obviously, a couple exceptions as necessary, as would be deemed by the legislature. But would you support and vote for a ban on cell phones in classrooms? That's one. Yes? No. 30 seconds each. Why, yes or no?
I think they're distractors. You've got parents calling kids in class and expecting their kid to get right back to them. We've got that kind of hovering mentality. And they're looking at things that are not to do with what the class is going on. I think having them pick them back up during the break, great. But do they actually need them sitting there? Do they actually got to be that connected to everything on social media every minute of their lives? I don't think so.
30 seconds to you, Ms. Brewer. Why not?
I don't like cell phones in classrooms either, but what I do like is local control. I think our locally elected board members and school administrators need to be making decisions that are best for their communities. They know their kids and students and parents best, and they should be the ones making those kinds of choices.
Thank you very much. Now, that's the end of round 3. Give them a round of applause. And believe it or not, it's time for our closing statements. So we're going to go in the same order as before. 2 minutes to each of you. Mr. Hines, we'll start with you. 2 minutes to close.
So I didn't end up yelling so I could get thrown out. So, it went okay. So, I've been running this race from the beginning about, it's not about voting against someone or against something. It's about voting for the person that's running for the office. And I've been telling everybody to get to know the other candidates. When we started, there was me and 2 other Republicans in the race. None of us attacked each other personally. There were some IEs that did, but none of us actually attacked each other personally. My opponent early on was saying, hey, the Republicans are going to race to the bottom and start mudslinging. It's going to be ugly, and it's going to be politics as normal. We didn't do that. Now, as soon as I won the runoff, the first attack ad came out from my opponent, mudslinging against me and trying to say I was an ally of Ryan Walters, I was against abortion, I was against public education, and that I was against in vitro fertilization, none of which is true. So what I would tell everybody is, the ones that usually cast the first stone are normally the ones that are doing it themselves. I'm a history major, and I've read a lot about that. And I just encourage everybody to get out and know who is running for office, pick the best leader who can do the most for Senate District 47 and Oklahoma, and let's move ahead.
Thank you very much. Your fans can clap. That's a good time to clap. That's your final remark. There you go. Okay. Ms. Brewer, 2 minutes to you to close us out.
Well, once again, thank you all for sitting through this really important conversation. Your engagement as we choose a new state senator to represent us is so important. I believe in facts and truth, and I have been true to the things that I promised and committed to from the very beginning of this race. I believe we must hold Ryan Walters accountable. I believe we must grow our economy. I believe we must keep great teachers in our schools. I believe we must have access to health care. And I think we do all of that by putting political division and labels aside and coming together as Oklahomans and neighbors to find common ground and build real solutions to the problems that we face. I have called out some truths about my opponent because I think you deserve to know, as the voters, the kinds of things that he is on record saying. You can't get away from the fact that he has called Ryan Walters admirable. Ryan Walters is a failure. That is just the facts. He is supported by really extreme organizations. One in particular, the Lion's Den, is a Christian nationalist organization based in Edmond. Its leader is the most photographed person on Kelly's Facebook page next to himself. She wholeheartedly supports Ryan Walters and has Ryan Walters signs in their yards. These are the kinds of people that are supporting Kelly Hines. I am backed by a bipartisan coalition of Oklahomans who are ready to do politics differently by working together and seeking common ground. Voting has already begun in our district and across the state. I hope that you are prepared to cast a ballot, whether you're mailing an absentee ballot or voting early October 30th through November 2nd or going to the polls on November 5th. Please make a plan to vote. Please make your voice heard. I'm ready to get to work for you, and I'd be so honored to count on your vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are our closing statements. Thank you very much. I've got just a couple things to say. That's the conclusion of tonight's debate. Thank you to the candidates. Thank you to our partners, the Asian Chamber of Commerce, Young Professionals of Oklahoma City. Thank you to the State Chamber of Oklahoma, AARP, all the other sponsors of Non-Doc's work to make sure that these debates are possible. Thank you, News 9. Check out the stream, check out the recap, share this with your friends. Vote on November 5th or before then, early voting. We've got a lot of election coverage coming. I know so does News 9. Check it out. Thank you so much. Give everybody a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.